Hello all and welcome to Shatter Our Souls with Novard. And today we are tackling Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild with minimum weapon use. Episode number 32. Holy smokes, this has taken a lot longer than I was bargaining for. Originally I was aiming for maybe 28. But it's definitely gone a lot farther than I would have initially expected. So, oops there. Anywho, within Breath of the Wild and within gaming as a whole, there is a terminology called ludonarrative dissonance, which is effectively when a game's gameplay and the storyline don't necessarily match up. Now, for Link, it's kind of a 50-50. Ludonarrative dissonance is that the character and the storyline don't match up and it makes the character feel off, or that the story is written in a poor manner. An example of this would be how Link is the hero of time and he is all that. He has saved every single human being out there, and to a degree, I can't fault that. But they tell of the story of the hero of time as if he has no problems, no concerns, no faults, no problems, no... what's the word? Impulse. Or no impulsivity. But it's a video game. We all have low impulse control, or if you don't, you are doing better than most of us. Anywho, in Ocarina of Time, there is a moment wherein you have to buy your first shield. Or second shield, the Hylian shield out of Castletown. And for many people, especially those like myself, you take a first look at that and say, hey, I know what I'm supposed to do. You go to the House of Pots down the road, break everything in sight, and then walk out, walk back in, break everything in sight, walk out, walk back in, break everything in sight. And the point of this is that you need the money to get what you're going for. And do you technically need to right that instant? Absolutely not. But could you? Absolutely. And this is the first real instance of Link's actions not necessarily meeting or matching up with the storyline. Another example of it actually ties into Tears of the Kingdom. Now this one is probably far more famous because Tears of the Kingdom is a game where you are the hero who is trying to save the world from this newfound threat of Ganondorf beneath Hyrule Castle. You are seeing the world through a destroyed perspective once again. And Link is, of course, tasked with solving all the issues of Hyrule by himself, because that's what you do. But whether it's carrying Kevin's head up the hill only to kick it off a cliff, or creating a Korok barbecue, we all have this impulsivity to do things that are not all that hero-like. And that clashes with what we perceive as being this hero figure. So there's been an ongoing discourse that one day your village is being attacked, and of course, the village elders are freaking out, like, what are we supposed to do? This is way too much for us to handle, and this little child dressed in green with a sword comes running up, and of course, you think nothing of it. You throw him in the back with all the other children and say, you're not going out there. Only for him to wander his way out on the battlefield, destroy everything in sight, and as soon as he's done, looks at the rest of the people who are shocked that this kid is really good at one thing, and that's destroying monsters, and then proceeds to run around town, break all your pots, and, of course, run off screaming into the sunset, because that's what Link does. He's going on to his next adventure. Well, your town has built a shrine in honor of this individual. This statue in the middle of town, a little bit of a fountain, water piece, whatever. And every year, the entire community puts pots out in the middle of town around said statue. And of course, 4 generations pass and no sign of this individual is ever cropped up. And of course, as with all things, history likes to repeat itself. So one day this kid happens to walk back into town, break all the pots around the statue, rob everybody blind, scream a couple of times, and runs off into the sunset again. Yeah, the younger generation is absolutely baffled by this circumstance because we've been honoring this guy for how long? Meanwhile, the grandparents are like, oh my goodness, I just saw him again. What is the world coming to? And they are absolutely in reverence of this gremlin. And this is kind of the crux of ludonarrative dissonance. Most players can tend to agree that Link is a gremlin, that he is very much a battle-crazed, screams at the top of his lungs type of character. And up until, well, unless otherwise stated within special circumstances, generally Link is treated as being a destructive entity. But the thing is that he has always been treated both as this destructive entity in gameplay and a being that is working towards the betterment of all of Hyrule as his day job. Do I think that there's a possibility that both could exist? Absolutely. But I'm not going to deny that there are more than a few people who strapped a Korok to a rocket to launch him off into space. That is not something that is very hero-like. He is supposed to be kind, he's supposed to be generous, he's supposed to be... Well, based on what we hear, he is kind, he is generous, he is all-encompassing in terms of his capabilities to help people. And yet every time I play the game, I'm automatically like, hey, I'm going to destroy this thing over here. Also, has anybody ever realized that the Sheikah's shields, the triangular ones, look like the Triforce? Just saying. Anywho, with all that being said, there are some circumstances where Link doesn't really have much of this narrative dissonance attached to him. An example would be the character from Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. Now, as far as 2D Zeldas go, this one is actually one of my favorites. And the reason why is because, for me, it was the innocence of it. The childlike whimsy. What would it be like if you could shrink down to the size of an ant? What would the world look like from that perspective? What would an ordinary entity become? Well, one of the first enemies you fight is a green chew jelly, and of course, what's the one thing that you could do to a green chew jelly that would solve all problems? Why, letting the green chew jelly just, become a boss. And in this game, your goal is to be able to fight back against the forces of darkness, specifically characters like Botw and his army of monsters that was released from a specialty chest. In this case, Botw is the big bad evil guy, and Link is still the very innocent individual, but he is also an incredibly practiced swordsman. He's also an incredibly valuable and viable fighter for the Hylian forces. Four Swords Adventures and Four Swords looked into the possibility of giving each Link a different personality within their various art books, but often just the gameplay could not support it. The gameplay made all four Links effectively the same. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're actually playing with four players, of course, each of your four Links are going to have a slightly different personality and gameplay style. But if you're like me and didn't have any Link cables, Four Swords Adventures and Four Swords in general, as well as Triforce Heroes, generally had Link feeling more like a standard entity, not something super fantastic or over the top. Personal statement aside. But we could go further. What about the Link from Wind Waker? This Link is actually the one that I think does the best when it comes to story. See, Link in the, we'll call it the first half, up until the Tower of the Gods and the rematch with the Helmarok King. I honestly found that this Link was very consistent in his depiction. And it comes from the fact that this Link was driven by something other than just the narration. If you look at the circumstances surrounding the Wind Waker Link, his sibling being captured by the Helmarok King, his unwavering determination to do what he believed was right, and trying to catch the Helmarok King by literally jumping off a cliff. Smart? No. But you gotta give him credit where it's due. This Link is, for lack of better terminology, one of the better narratively. He's also one that doesn't have a whole lot of potential to mess around. Yeah, he gets to play pirate for a bit, running from one area of the world to the next, pulling treasure up from the depths of the sea. And 100% this is how I love to play the character. But there's not much that makes your gameplay feel like something different, feels like something unique from what you would ordinarily be playing as. The gameplay supports the narrative. But what would happen if you just gallivanted around the world? Well, up until defeating the Helmarok King, generally speaking, the game is very hand-holding. It says, hey, there is a massive ocean here, but we're focusing on these locations first. And that's intentional, for one. The world can't be too big or it's not approachable. Okay, finally. And think that's a moderate Pestis strain. Just wait till we get the major ones. Ugh, that's gonna be fun. But we could go further with this whole narrative dissonance problem as well. Because if we approach it from the perspective of Link is running around all of Hyrule, or in this case, the flooded Hyrule, looking for anything and everything, technically, it is still in support of his core values, his core beliefs, that he will do anything and everything to gain the power necessary to save his sister. After saving Errol, he then shows up and tries to help fight back against the forces of Ganon and whatnot, and hide Tetra/Zelda away. And he spends the next portion of the game trying to bind the Triforce so as to use it to his advantage and gain a upper hand, the strength he needs to be able to defeat Ganon. But also, he needs to be able to approach the game approach the problem from a totally different perspective. He needs to be able to strengthen the Master Sword. He needs to be able to prepare himself. And the majority of the side quests around this preparation phase all tie back to Link being the hero of Winds and what he, as a character, should be doing. That's great. There's no narrative discomfort there. It is literally, hey, I am aiming for A, B, C, and D. This is what I'm doing. Have fun. And it works. But if you took another character, like, let's say, the Majora's Mask Link. Majora's Mask Link is a very different entity. He's much more competent than his Ocarina of Time version. He has been around the block a few times. He adventures, he parkours his way through various areas. He isn't necessarily the fun-loving kid we remember. He's much more... He's bulked up a bit. He's stronger. He's more aware, if that makes sense. And this Link, every time he gets in a altercation, he wants to help people. But he knows he can't. At least most of the time. That 3-day cycle. Every time you reset the cycle, you are intentionally resetting the world to what it was before Link ever got involved. And it's painful when you think about it. Every single time that the Majora's Mask Link resets, all the lives he's changed, all the people he's helped, everything he has done, come back and he's left with nothing but a memory of what he could have done. This seems rather silly, rather odd, if I will. Of course, Link is going to do what he needs to do to help the people, but I also feel like this version of Link was the one that was treated the worst. Everything you do is to help the people of Termina in Majora's Mask. Every time you help a person, you make their lives better. You fight back the aliens on Romani Ranch. You play the Song of Healing for Darmani or Mikau. Then, perfect. Good for you. Oughta be. Hats off. Golf clap to you. But every time you reset, everything you've done is gone. And this Link has to battle with the fact that every time that he plays, or that he does something to help the people of Termina, he's going to go back to a state where he hasn't done anything. Where he needs to continue on the legacy, the beliefs, the understanding, the hopes and dreams of every single one of these individuals. And maybe it's just me saying, okay, yeah, these characters are silly or that they aren't going to get what they need. Maybe. But this is also one of the reasons why I believe that Link is the most tragic. The Majora's Mask Link, for all of his strengths, for everything he does, effectively, at least for the majority of the game, accomplishes effectively nothing. Now, we know from beating the game and playing it X number of times that he does defeat Majora. He does break out of that 3-day loop. But reality is, if he didn't break out, he'd be stuck trying to help the people of Termina endlessly. And it would probably end up looking like an average Tuesday. He might give up. I think part of it is just that he is unwilling to give up. Unwilling to waver in his pursuit of helping people. But what helps people in the short term versus the long term is two very different situations. I'm definitely looking too deeply into this. Anywho, we have officially gotten to the very last corner of Hyrule. And honestly, I'm terrified about this. We have gotten about, I believe it's 86 shrines, or just over 2/3 of them. And to me, this is a huge accomplishment, given that I have yet to actually use a weapon of any variety. But we're running into a bit of a concern going forward. Number one, there are a number of shrines that are simply not accessible, or were not accessible at the time I was visiting them. Shrines like the Kakariko Village shrines that require like 5 side quests to get into. The the training shrines, the shrines devoted to different portions of the world, sometimes don't necessarily do what we're hoping for. Anywho, so at this moment in time, we are looking for the last shards of this monument. Now, for years, I thought that this monument was just, it's the Mirror of Twilight. But the more I look at it, the more ridiculous it is to say that. Like, sure, it's a slab of stone that glows at night, but it's not the Twilight Mirror. It'd be nice if it was, but no. Anywho, we are going to find the last piece, and upon finding the last piece, we're going to go back and kind of do whatever we can with what we have here. We are also, hopefully next week, going to be making a trek all the way over to Eventide Island. Now, Eventide is going to be a totally other ballgame, but it's one that I think a lot of people can relate to. Anywho, back to our regularly scheduled programming. The character I think that does the ludonarrative dissonance the best ludonarrative dissonance the best actually comes to Twilight Princess Link. You get this sense that this particular Link is an incredibly well-meaning individual. He helps those around him as often as he can. He has special individuals from the various kids of Ordon Village to his special one in Ilia. This is all well and good. This makes him more approachable, more of a good character than most other characters ever will be. His actions in the early parts of the game are devoted to finding Ilia or Leah, as well as Colin, Mallow, and Tallow. These are his people. These are his friends. These are kids that he has spent his entire life with, and he wants to protect them. After beating about the 3rd dungeon, he grows a little more attached to Midna, and the fact that Midna is someone that he wants to help as well. And so he seeks out ways of helping her through various means, whether it's finding the Mirror of Twilight and a means of returning to her home. This is, I think, one of the keys that makes her such a unique individual and as powerful as she is that she is willing, well, both of them are willing to do what they believe is absolutely necessary in order to help the people around them. The latter half of the game is focusing on situations like helping Midna find the Mirror of Twilight, helping Ilia get her memories back, and settling the score with Zant and Ganondorf, who had wronged him to begin with, had wronged the people around him. In this game, yes, there are occasionally situations where you can go off the beaten path, so to speak. Mess around, do a little bit of snowboarding at Snow Peak. But it doesn't clash heavily with who he is as a character. Who he is cares about the people around him. What he does often ends up not quite matching up. But it's close enough that most people aren't going to notice or care. And this is a shrine that I admit I kind of had to laugh at. Because as I was doing it, I was... how do I want to word this? I was overthinking things. A lot. And sometimes it's fun to overthink games. But sometimes it's interesting to come to the conclusions that you might come to and say, hey, this is what this should do. And sometimes it's just easier to break the game by being silly. This is one of the times where breaking the game by being silly is unironically the way to go. Kaboom? Yes, Rico. Kaboom. Wait. So, I was initially going to bomb that, but the problem is that as I was about to bomb it, I came to the realization that I could just grab the barrel, run around the barricade, and we'd be fine. At least that was my hope. As long as I could jump with it, it was going to be okay. So I did. And this is one of those cases where overthinking something is often more detrimental to your progress through a game than simply trying and seeing what happens. And I think that's actually one of the best things about puzzles in video games is, for me, I have a tendency to overthink them. If I know, oh yeah, I can do A, B, C, D in like 30 seconds flat, I'm not going to be super worried about it. But if I feel like doing something that could be seen slightly out of order is going to do anything to cause me frustration, I generally tend to overthink it a lot. And it can sometimes lead to some funny circumstances. So, we're just going to stand here for 30 seconds while we wait for the moving platform to come back. And once it gets here, we're going to do what we do. Honestly, I kind of like the way that the various links act. I think it's become fairly evident that I do. This particular link is treated as incredibly intelligent, but is also very much seen as an individual who tends to goof off. And that's intentional, I think. If Link didn't have this tendency to goof off and do things that you otherwise wouldn't do, then half of the joy of adventuring would disappear. And that would be a real shame, because this is one of the best worlds that Zelda has ever come up with. Anyways, if you like what you see, drop a like, leave a sub, we'll catch you next week. Until then, have a good one.